Are you recording?
Yes. All right, everybody, welcome. We're going to get going. My name is Brittany, and I'm the coordinator for the Crow Wing County Master Gardener Extension Volunteer Program. I'm excited to be here today with Jackie Burkey presenting Growing Hardy Roses Up North. We are hybrid, so we have people online and in person. So thank you for joining us today. Hold most of your questions till the end, right, Jackie? Or
whatever. We'll take some breaks.
We'll let her roll. Try to repeat them so people on Zoom can hear.
Okay.
But we have Jackie has been a Master Gardener volunteer since 2007. She spent many years in Texas, so she's been happy to be back in Minnesota with good soil and reasonable weather. She teaches about worm composting, regular composting, edible landscaping, and growing hardy roses.
Dahlias.
And dahlias. Fact or fiction, kind of a jack of all trades. So. And what? Worms, yes. She's the worm lady.
I love my worms. Well, welcome. Today we're going to talk about growing hardy roses up north here in the frozen tundra, although we aren't so frozen anymore. But so many people are so afraid to grow roses. And so over the last at least 10 years, I've been trying to dispel that growing roses is scary if you pick the right rose. So we will, this was one that's in my yard. I thought it was dying a few years ago, so I cut it all the way back and it's grown back. So you can't kill these things even when you think you're killing them. So let's see if this is working today. It'll work. Nope. Okay, well. It's not seeing me. Uh-oh. I'm screen sharing. Here we go. Okay. All right. So what is a hardy rose? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about how to grow them. And then I've got, you should have a list on your handout, and we'll just sort of roll through all the pretty pictures and you can mark off the ones you think are gorgeous and that you want to get. Oops. All right. But the first question I always ask when I give the rose talk, when was your last tetanus shot? Because if you start messing with roses, you're going to get stabbed. And it would be in your medical file 10 years, but for gardeners, they actually recommend 7 years because we're fooling in the dirt where that tetanus bacillus is. So stay up to date on your tetanus shots. Okay, so hardy roses are not hybrid tea roses. Those are the fancy florist roses. You know, you grow this bush and you fool with it all summer and spray it and do all sorts of stuff, and you get one or two blooms. So that's not what we're talking about. These are gorgeous, and you can buy these as the packaged bare root ones. I haven't done that recently, but you know, they're $7, $8, $9, which is not that expensive if you're buying petunias and all those things. And you can grow it for a year and then heck with it. Although I didn't even cover these several times, and a number of them even came back uncovered. So they're a little hardier than we think they are sometimes. But hardy roses are also not the Floribunda roses. Now this one down, let's see if this is working. Down here is my Cinco de Mayo, which is a Floribunda rose. It's in a very protected spot, gets the south and west sun, and it's now 13 years old. So it keeps coming back because I do give it extra cover in the winter. So you can grow Floribunda roses here. Floribunda, abundant flowers. So you'll get a lot of flowers on one bush. And again, you can get those in the packaged roses too, and just have a beautiful rose bush if you want to. But there's no guarantee those are going to come back because those are for the warmer zones. And that's all. We're now also not talking about grandifloras, which are a combination between tea roses and Floribundas. So what is a hardy rose? Hardy rose is hardy. And this is my all-time favorite picture. Growing in the crack in the sidewalk. And look at that gorgeous rose. Obviously, nobody's taking care of it. I don't know how it gets water. And the insult to injury is there's the smoker's sign right there. So that's where you're supposed to stand to smoke. But that thing is obviously a number of years old and still coming back. So don't ever say you can't grow roses, because you can obviously do at least as well as this. So hardy roses, the main thing in our definition is that they survive our winters, our cold winters. Now we've moved up. We're going to talk about the hardiness map, which the new one came out a year or two ago. And Crow Wing County, we're now up in the 4A region. So when we talk about hardiness zones, we're talking about the average lowest temperature of the winter, not what the average low temperature was of the whole winter. You take the number of the coldest overnight in the winter, and then you take those over a number of years and you average those and see what they are. We're getting warmer, obviously. But you draw it's maps, and the maps are more accurate now than they were 10, 15 years ago, because there are just more reporting stations. So the map changes, but roses are historically grown in the warmer zones, like these that sort of ring the western and southern part of the country. When you think of roses, you think of Portland, Oregon, or the Rose Parade in Southern California. Or Tyler, Texas is where most of those packaged roses come out of Tyler, Texas. Earl Campbell, the old running back, what came from Tyler, he was the Tyler rose. And then of course, all across up into the Carolinas are the main rose growing states for the floribundas and the tea roses and all. So if you're gonna hybridize a rose and want to make big sales on it, make the big bucks, you're obviously going to sell it to where your roses can grow well and where there'll be a lot of population. There's a lot of population in these warmer zones. So there wasn't a lot of money put into roses for cold weather, but we'll get to that. So when we look at how Minnesota has changed, this whole section up here, there were 2B, which 2 goes down to, what do we say, 40 below. We didn't have too much of that the last few years. So the numbers have changed. We've even got a spot of 5 down here in far southern Minnesota. And you can see the zones have moved north, so that 3B that used to be this hole all the way up in here, now 3B has moved farther north. And we are now firmly, well, not firmly, but we're Brainerd, we're in the, whoops, I'll be back to that. We're in the 4A. So what that means is you have a lot more selection. There are a lot more roses that are bred to survive zone 4 than zone 3. And if you're really daring, you can plant some zone 5s and maybe get away with it. So hardy roses are also quite disease tolerant. They tend to grow by themselves. So if they were going to be wiped out by disease, they probably would have gotten wiped out by disease. So they don't suffer a lot of problems, which means you don't have to spend a lot of time and money and effort treating problems. They also tend to grow very vigorously. These things want to grow, they want to produce, they want to make a lot of flowers for you. So they're a great addition to your landscape. And they require minimal landscape. These are rugosas, pavement roses. You obviously wouldn't put in these long hedgerows if you had to be out there every day deadheading the flowers and stuff. And these actually grow all the way down to Port Aransas. I've seen them down there in the southern coast of Texas. Salt doesn't even affect these things. So if you plant a pavement rose, you've got a rose for life. So what does a hardy rose need in order to be really healthy? Can we get rid of this bottom line, do you think? That covers up all the names of.
Try just clicking like away from it.
Doesn't.
I don't think you can try clicking on
No, I don't think so. Oh, well, we'll just live with it. Okay, so the important thing is that always we say right plant, right place. So site selection is important. They don't want wet feet, so that no standing water. They need at least 6 hours of sunshine. More is better. They'll take full day of sunshine. They need air movement to keep the leaves dry, because a lot of those fungal diseases are what will mess up your roses. Whoops, oh no, we did that again. Rich soil is a good thing. They want to be slightly acidic, not real acidic, not like azaleas or something. Amend them with compost and whatever it said underneath there.
One more time. Let's try. Find video panel. Oh, that's you. Okay.
Oh, what was that? Meeting controls? Is that one?
Maybe.
That one?
Yeah.
Oh, yay.
Nice work.
Okay. Because now you can see the names of the roses on more of them that I posted. This was My Hope for Humanity, which was a great rose. And then all of a sudden 1 year, didn't come back. I don't know why. Although I had other things planted in that spot and they haven't come back either. So my theory is there's a dead body or something under that, but. All right. So when we're going to plant roses, if you've gotten a bare root rose, we're almost getting a little late in the season for a bare root rose, but anytime you get a bare root, anything, you got to get it in the ground as soon as possible before those roots dry out. So most of what you're going to find are going to be container grown roses. You can plant those anytime, but we recommend before Labor Day because that gives the roots a chance to really establish before the ground freezes. And a lot of times there'll be good bargains, good sales on roses late in the season. So you can pick up some nice cheap ones. Make the hole twice as wide, but no deeper than what the container is. So same depth as the container. Sort of break up, loosen up the roots, pull them out, spread them out, and then a good layer of mulch, good thick layer of mulch on top. Keep down the weeds. You prevent splashing because it's that splashing up onto the leaves that causes some of the diseases. And the mulch also helps keep the water in. Like last summer was so hard with no rain coming. So you really needed to have things well mulched. When you water your roses, 1 inch of water per week is what we recommend. That counts rain. So if we get rain, you don't have to do extra water. Water down at the base, keep the water off the leaves and avoid splashing up. This is my Morden Fireglow, and this picture does not do justice to it. That color is just burn your eyes, orange red. I love the Morden Fireglow. Fertilizing roses get hungry. Now, a lot of studies recently have shown that we're all over fertilizing our home gardens, especially with phosphorus, the middle number. But so you should do a soil test, $20 through the extension. But with roses, you don't want to apply too much of the first number of the high nitrogen number, because then you'll get a real lush rose bush, but it won't have very many flowers. You'll have a lot of leaves. So we're looking for a higher middle number because the middle number will help produce the flowers. First application should be right now when the growth is appearing. Second application when the buds set, and these are light doses. You don't want to really overfeed them. Final application in mid-July because you don't want to fertilize after August 1st because you'll get new growth, and that new growth needs to be able to harden off before frost. Otherwise, that's going to just freeze off when it gets cold. So quit fertilizing in the middle of June. There'll be plenty of fertilizer in the ground for it. Chlorosis can be a problem. You get these lighter leaves, lighter colored leaves, pretty obvious, mostly on the pavement rugosas, these real heavy leathery leaved ones. And it's not that we don't have enough iron. It's caused by a lack of iron up in the leaf. There's plenty of iron, obviously, in our water and in our soil. It's that the pH has gotten too high up into the basic range. You need a acidic pH to keep that iron moving. So add peat moss. I'd recommend sulfur. And then there are some acidic fertilizers, like muracid is one of them, that it will help lower your pH. But as soon as you do that, you start seeing this problem solved. When you're pruning your roses, you don't want to cut too high and leave this stump that'll dry off. That can be an entry point for water or for insects. You don't want to cut too low because the nutrients, remember, are coming up and down through the stem. And if you've cut below the bud, you've cut off some of the access to the water and nutrients. So a correct cut is just a little bit a ways above an outward facing bud. So when you have your cane coming up and you have the different buds, choose to prune just above one that's going to head out. You want to keep the center of your plant kind of open so that air can come through and the leaves can stay dry. So you don't want your plant growing in, you want it to be growing out. So deadheading, well, if you remove the faded blossoms, obviously things will look nicer, but that helps encourage some of the new blossoms. Always use a clean, sharp pruners, clean them off with hand sanitizer is one of the best things. We've all got plenty of hand sanitizer laying around now. Bleach will corrode your pruners. So alcohol is a better thing to use, but wipe that off because you don't want to get the alcohol in the plant either. Again, the 45-degree angle and do it, cut again right above an outside headed, you say a 5 leaflet set, just because the stem is going to be stronger down there. That's not carved in stone, but don't prune right below the flower, go down a couple of leaf sets. And then the other option is to not deadhead and let the rose form fruit. You know, roses are related to apples. Did you know that? And if you get all the way to having rose hips, or even if they don't ripen, if you cut it open, like on the equator horizontally, you'll see the same pattern inside as if you cut an apple horizontally of how the seeds set up. They're very closely related. So if you quit deadheading, they'll form these rose hips, especially the rugosas, the pavement roses, ones like that. The birds like these. They're pretty for the winter interest if you want to leave that. I have a friend who made jelly. She said, but you can't believe how many rose hips it took to make a few jars of jelly. So if you're ambitious enough to make rose hip jelly, it can be tasty. It makes a good tea too. I've never tried it, but okay, questions up till this point?
Question. You were saying pavement roses, is that like a branch of roses?
Yeah, it's a whole type of rose. It's called pavement roses. We'll get to that. You can't kill them. I've got some for you if you want. Nope, it's not even going to be a challenge. Okay, so let's talk about winter because that's our problem up here. So one of the beauties of shrub roses, and it's not 100% of them, but almost all shrub roses, hardy roses, are on their own rootstock. The floribundas, most of those are grafted roses. So they have a root system that's sturdier, more vigorous, whatever. And then they've been grafted. So it's the pretty part. These hardy roses grow on their own roots. So you can prune them back to the ground. They can freeze back to the ground and they'll come back and be true. If your floribunda freezes to the ground, then what comes back is probably going to be the rose that root would form. And that's usually kind of some tough, yucky rose, not something you're going to want. But on these that grow from their own roots, it's obviously going to form the same flower, same plant that you had. So you can tell on this one of mine, that there's the snow line. Snow is a wonderful insulator. I read one time that 1 inch of snow provides 10 degrees of insulation. So the difference between 20 below and 10 below is pretty huge when you're coming to protecting your perennials and things. So you can tell the snow line was right to there because the plant came back in the spring, green below there. So all of this you would prune off, get rid of it. And here's the new shoots coming through the ground, through the mulch. So the plant will grow back even if it looks dead to you because of the frost. We have some climbers that go up and over an arbor. If you know Jackie Framing, this was her old house when she lived in town. John Cabot Rose, it's another one you can't kill, and sometimes you wish you could because they have a lot of thorns. But so even when they're up, and I have the newer Above and Beyond that we'll see in a minute, even though they're up, exposed in the wind, and I've looked at it mine sometime and thought, oh, you know, when it's 25 below and the wind is blowing, you just think, oh man, sprouts out every spring. So these things have been well-bred and are very tough. So they're the opposite of those prissy little tea roses. Spring. I mean, you could prune anytime, but prune off the dead stuff in the spring and it'll take off. So propagation can be by suckers. Here's one of my pavement roses when I say you can't kill them. There's a sucker coming. There's a sucker coming. There's a sucker coming. Here's the mother plant is way over here. So she sends out underground roots that periodically pop up as new plants. So you can cut those off and create new plants if you want to, create a hedge, or if you want to give them away or sell them in a plant sale, whatever. So all you have to do is take a spade and cut that umbilical cord to the mother plant. The best practice is to do that in the fall and let the roots then on that sucker grow, and you'll have a much better root system. I did this for demonstration several years ago, and so we'll just see what comes up. So when you pull it up, you can see there's a little bit of a root system on each of those suckers. But if I'd cut the umbilical cord and come back, 3, 4, 5 months later, then that root system would have gotten a lot more vigorous. You'd have a better chance of the sucker taking hold. So you just pot them up and you got hopefully 2 new rose plants. So as far as diseases, powdery mildew is probably the one you're most likely to run into. Dry or humid weather, well, that's kind of the choice. Worse when it's near 80 and the lows are around 60. Well, that's kind of our summers. So fungus is powdery mildew is something you need to watch out for. If you have a problem with powdery mildew, you need to treat early, because once you see it, it's too late. It's already there. So if in the past you've got a plant that every year gets powdery mildew, start treating with a fungicide early. It probably won't kill your plant, but it may weaken it, and the leaves maybe will fall off. You'll have bare naked stems by fall, but not a huge problem with most of these, and most of them the newer models have been bred to withstand powdery mildew. Black spot's the other thing. We see this on our tomatoes. Let me get me out of the way. Yeah, you can have a minor infestation, or you can have it get heavy, and then the leaves do tend to fall off. It's the little black spots, and it's worse in our summer weather. That will weaken the plant over time, like that Morning Fire Glow I said with the gorgeous hurt your eyes color. That thing, by fall, it was just dead looking. And I finally said, 1 more year of this and I'm pulling you out. And ever since then, it's gorgeous. It's been gorgeous. I've learned if I yell at my plants, they do better. I did the same thing with my azalea. I gave it 1 more chance, and it's been gorgeous ever since. So yell at your plants. It's my recommendation. Okay, so here's my worst enemy when it comes to any kind of rose. But they love the pavement roses especially, but it's the rose chafer. And I didn't have those for the first, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years at least. And suddenly we have them in town. They're these little sort of khaki colored beetles. They're always hooked together with their mate. We call them the sex bugs at our house because they're always mating. They crawl up out of the ground. They love sandy soil. So we're perfect. They crawl up out of the ground. They're good flyers, and they find their buddy and they mate, and they eat especially the petals and the center of flowers. And then once they've mated, they drop to the ground, lay their eggs, and we're off and running for next year. The easiest way to deal with them is to walk around with your bucket of soapy water and hand pick them. There's a certain delight in seeing them drown. Don't squish them, don't step on them, because that releases the pheromones that makes all their buddies come. So you need to just drop them in the soapy water. You can start spraying, of course, you start messing with the pollinators. So you can use some of the the high-powered systemics that get into every part of the plant. But again, that's, the jury's kind of out on what that does to the pollinators, but they don't hang around too long, couple weeks, and then they're gone till next year. But ew, they're so annoying, and you come in the house and they're on you and just, ugh. But I guess I've had them bite me like when they're in my collar and, they feel trapped, but otherwise they don't really bother us. But they wreck your blooms. Now, last year, things bloomed fairly late. Let's see, was that how it worked? Late because of the snow was there so late. And I thought, oh, maybe they've come and gone, but they showed up late too. But they're out there. The hardy roses, for the most part, they won't give you as much as the first flush that you get in the spring, but most of them will repeat bloom. So once these guys are gone, you should get another bunch of flowers showing up, and the pavements especially, they'll keep flowering forever. Now, a new problem we're going to see now that we've moved up to 4A is the Japanese beetles are here, and several of our master gardeners had significant Japanese beetles last year in their gardens. Again, the same thing is to throw them in your bucket of water, but these guys fly pretty good distances and they stay around most of the summer. So they'll keep chewing into August, and they don't like just roses. They'll chew on almost everything that you've planted. So grapevines, they'll decimate those. What are their other favorites? Birch trees, yes. So watch for them. They're kind of emerald green. They have 5 little tufts of white on their butts. They chew and they chew and they chew and they chew. So keep looking for any pest. The sooner you can deal with a pest when the population is smaller, the easier it is to get rid of them. IPM is the integrated pest management. We go through these steps. You keep inspecting. You decide how much can I stand? How much can I live with? If they're just chewing a few leaves, oh well. But if they're chewing the whole birch tree, then you want to deal with it. You choose the least toxic method. That's why the bucket of soapy water is a good first step. And then just keep cycling. And if it gets to the point you can't stand it, then you can bring out the big guns. Okay, questions at this point? Okay, so we'll talk about the roses. These 2 books, they're almost getting old now because there are so many new varieties of roses. But these 2 books, the Hardy Roses by Robert Osborne and Growing Roses in Cold Climates by Richard Haas and others. These are great books, just with a lot of information about planting them, growing them, about the varieties. But of course, they don't have a lot of the newest varieties. So if you're a rank beginner and want more information, they're a great start. Yes.
Quick question. So the roses that you talked about, the wild roses, those would be considered rugosa?
The wild roses are probably, most of them are rugosas.
Can we transplant them at this point in time? Because if they're in one section.
Sure. I think you can, they're wild. They're gonna survive. So, and if it doesn't work, then do it in the fall. Find something that's your best bet. Okay, so we'll kind of go through on your sheet. I grouped them by, I don't know what I grouped them by, but sort of their toughness and then by their historical place in the timeline. So rugosas have been around a long time. They're native to Japan, China, and Korea. They've been around a lot of old farmhouses. These are the roses you'll find at old farmhouses. They're pretty. A lot of them are pretty, and a lot of them smell wonderful. One of our master gardeners was so thrilled when she got a Teresa Bugnet. And I go, no, it's Therese Bounier, let's turn on a little French here. But they're beautiful, beautiful roses, and they are tough. So here's the pavements, comes in three colors. Like I said, you just can't kill them, and they put out those suckers. So if you think, oh, I'll put a nice rose bush right here, be prepared, because you're either gonna have to keep digging out those suckers or just let it keep going, and you'll end up with like that hedge along that driveway. But if you have a spot that you want to fill in and have some color, and for pollinators, these always have bees on them. They love these, and they smell fabulous. So pavement roses are great. And to show you the toughness, one of the Master Gardener projects years ago was down at the jail downtown. They had put in new parking lots, and they put in big rain garden and stuff. But over in the parking lot, we planted these rugosas. So in the second year, you can see they were surviving, and they got no care. Nobody mulched it. You know, the county made all sorts of promises to us that they didn't keep up with. But by year 4, even with no care, you can see they turned into pretty good bushes. I don't think this median's still here. The rain garden they paved over, I know, but you know, these grow with no care. Okay, so then we move on to the Canadian Explorer series. This was started up in Canada, because remember I said, you know, all the people want roses down, but up in Canada, a bunch of people said, well, we want roses too. So the Canadian government decided to put some money into roses, into hybridizing some that would survive in Canada. So in Ottawa and in Quebec, they had some research centers, and they came up with flowers that they named after famous Canadian explorers. I've had several of these. I have a JP Connell. It's a gorgeous creamy color. And I've put them now by color. So we'll start with the lightest colors. So we're not going to talk about all of them, but just to give you an example of what they look like. Some of these are really short, low to the ground. And I've given you on your sheet what their height is. But they don't all have the rugosa leathery leaf, but a lot of them do. And you can see some of them have just like that one that I said I had and cut back and now it's back, is my William Baffin. They have just a few petals. The bees love this one too. And then some of them have lots of petals. So they really made a wide range of cultivars from their experiments or their, you know, growing. And now we get into the darker colors and some of the redder ones. They do. This original Canadian Explorer series, not all of them, but most of them smell good. The pavement roses smell wonderful. Okay, so that was the end of the Canadian Explorers. Great project, great success, and because we're close to Canada, they were for sale down here. Not all of them, but Champlain, you used to be able to find that one everywhere. So then they decided to move on to the Canadian Parkland series. Up in Manitoba, they started in Morden. They started the Morden Research Station. And what they were looking for this time were some shorter ones, more colors, more rose-like. You know, everybody wants their roses to look like what you get on Valentine's Day. There aren't any climbers in this series. In the Explorers, some of those get, you know, these big 25-foot canes that go out. But this Morden series, the Canadian Parkland series, doesn't have any climbers, and there's pretty much no fragrance in any of these. So more choice of how they look, but you know, some of the things we like in roses weren't here. But these are really beautiful roses, a lot of them. There's the Hope for Humanity I had. Winnipeg Parks is widely available. Any of the ones named Morden are just gorgeous. I crave a Morden blush, but I've kind of run out of space. I finally got a Morden Sunrise, and it is beautiful. So you can see more petals on a lot of them, more colors, more variety. There's the Morden Fireglow. This one's closer to what the colors look like. The Prairie Joy and Prairie Snowdrift were also included in this series. You have to be a little careful if you see a rose named Prairie, because some of those came out of an Iowa. Dr. Buck named a lot of his with prairie names, and those are pretty much zone 5 and warmer. So if you see one named Prairie, make sure you check the zone tag on it. So then Canada decided we want to put our money into growing wheat instead of roses. So no more money for the roses. So I don't know what's wrong with those people that want to eat instead of enjoy roses, but whatever. The University of Minnesota actually got their hands on a lot of the research material, the plants. So a lot of the research moved down to University of Minnesota and to the grower down in Cottage Grove Bailey's. So you'll see a lot of things were based off of those roses. But up in Canada, they did develop this cute little one, and I have one of these, and it's pretty cute. It doesn't get more than about this tall, and it was grown for the let me think what it's called, but it's essentially the Canadian version of the American Cancer Society. So a portion of the sale of each of these roses goes to their cancer research, and the rose is called Never Alone. Whoops. And it flowers off and on all summer, just covered with these little flowers, but really pretty. You know, if you have just a little spot, or these would work in a container. Then they did the Canadian Artist series. Somebody else picked up some of the original material and started naming them after famous Canadian artists. So Emily Carr was the red one, Felix Leclerc was the pink one, and Bill Reed was the first hardy yellow rose. And I have one of those, and it's hardy and it makes beautiful roses, beautiful yellow. But again, no color. Oops. Going the wrong way. What happened now? There we go. Okay, and two more that were newer were Campfire and Oscar Peterson. And I saw both of these at one of our big box stores yesterday. So these are available. Okay, so Bailey's down in Cottage Grove, one of the things they started hybridizing were these polyantha roses, which instead of putting up a stem with a rose on top, a polyantha, many. So there are many little roses on one stem. So you get sort of this whole cluster in a space of about, the size of your fist or so. There's this whole cluster of little tiny roses that are cute. And their most famous ones were Sven and Oli and Lena. And you've probably seen those. I don't really care for any of these, but they were marketing genius, to put those names on them. And the tags were hilarious, put the dirty part in the ground and put the, it was really funny. And a lot of people have had a lot of success growing these. In a lot of places, they weren't quite as hardy up here, but of course they were, built for zone 4. So some that were right out in the open didn't survive too well, but if you want something different, and they don't get to be a huge, well, they get fairly large actually, but a lot of flowers on it. And then, come on. Oh, this was Oli. Why does it go backwards? I don't understand what's going on with this thing.
Do you think these work or no? That may be better.
Okay. So, no. But this was their latest one was Sigrid. And actually this one's more attractive, I think, than the other ones. So what you see when you get to the rose hip stage, then you can see how many flowers, because each of those rose hips, with my pointer, each of these was a flower. So these are like, if you're into making winter arrangements and stuff, you could have a few stems of these and they had a lot of color. So just, again, something different for your yard. Suddenly Summer series, supposedly a series, was started by Kathy Zuzek at the University of Minnesota. She was going to breed a whole series of roses, and she only got as far as one, Summer Waltz. And I lucked down to one of these. The only place you could buy them was down at the Minnesota Arboretum. And it's my all-time favorite rose, no question about it. It's gorgeous. It flowers off and on all summer. It's got a lot of petals and they just ripple in the wind. She never trademarked it. So if you can find somebody with one who's smarter than me that can grow some new ones, you won't go to jail for making cuttings from a trademark rose. I've tried a number of times, and sometimes they almost start growing roses and then they conk out. So I don't know. I have to practice some more, but
Still purchase them on the.
I think so. I can't guarantee that, but I went to their Mother's Day sale a number of years ago and got like the last one that day. I was so thrilled, but I don't know. And then Kathy's position at the university was cut. So no more Suddenly Summer series. So much for that. But it's a fantastic, and it smells wonderful. But of course, it's also one of the favorites for the rose chafers. But because it keeps flowering, I get more flowers later in the summer. So Oh So Easy is a Bailey's series that they started. Very, very hardy. It says zone 4, but I think they all do quite well up here. Lots of different colors, no fragrance that I'm aware of. And most of them are kind of low growers. So if you had like a slope or something that you wanted to cover with some color, they work well there because they spread. This is the first apricot colored climber. This is the first real climber that the University of Minnesota bred. I have one. I love it. There were a whole bunch of them at the big box store. It is so vigorous. The girl who cuts my hair got one, and next time I saw her, I said, "Well, how's your rose doing?" She goes, "We went away for the weekend and it had shot something out a full 8-foot fence length." So this thing wants to climb. It wants to grow. The color is just amazing because it's so different from everything else. And it smells unbelievable. When you walk by, it just overwhelms you with. So they did a good job of getting the smell, the fragrance back in. It's also definitely one of the favorites of the rose chafers. But every time I walk by, I have my little bucket and knock them in there. And then all summer, I mean, in a couple of weeks now, it'll be just covered. And then off and on all summer, it'll put out a few more blooms. So you never know. But that first flush in the spring is pretty spectacular. I've got it up and over an arbor, and it's amazing. So if you have a place for a climbing rose, I would highly recommend it. It's beautiful. Dr. Buck, I think I mentioned, was down at Iowa State University, and he did his hybridizing the old-fashioned way, because this was a number of years ago. He would plant fields of a rose, and then if one popped up was different, maybe taller or different markings, whatever, that's called a sport when you get one that's a little bit different. And he would grab those and then hybridize those. And so he came up with a whole bunch of different. Freckles is one of his most favorite ones. Most of those were zone 5, 4, and actually zone 5 and up. So you don't see a whole lot of Dr. Buck roses in Minnesota. But now that we're warming up, some of those may come back, but his really looked like roses. You could tell this one looked more like a tea rose. So the Dr. Buck roses were famous, and they would come back if it wasn't too cold. Knockout roses are one of Bailey's amazing successes. They're the #1 rose sold worldwide. You can't kill these either. No fragrance in them, but they are spreaders, so you can put them up the hillside too. Zone 4 and up, they just can't be killed off either. And now they come in a number of different colors. It started out with just the pink, and then I think there was a red, but now there's a number of different colors. And just to prove how they'll grow anywhere, I had one when we lived in Texas. This was taken about 5 or 6 years after we moved away. The person who bought our house never watered. We had in-ground sprinkler, never watered, never mowed, according to the neighbors. My flower bed by the mailbox obviously completely went to pot, but there's that rose. And the day we were there, the like we do wind chill and they do heat index, was 116 degrees out by the pavement here. And that thing was still unwatered in Texas with no rain and still flowering. So these absolutely are a hardy rose in any climate. Easy Elegance is another Bailey rose series, a whole series. Most of them still don't smell, but they are beautiful. They went on the market as a zone 4 and up, but they were for sale up here when we were still 3. So I called Bailey's and said, are you gonna, because they have, they're real proud of their 2-year guarantee if it doesn't come back. So I said, well, are you gonna honor the guarantee up here in zone 3? And he goes, I'll get back to you. And he did and said, yes, we will honor it. Keep your receipt. But I haven't lost any of my Easy Elegance. They're very hardy. This is my all the rage, beautiful color. Again, it's in sort of that southwest corner where it gets good sunshine and good protection. But this one has the real shiny leaves. So it's a little more hybrid tea looking. Very pretty plant even without the flowers on it, but gorgeous when it's covered with flowers. And Easy Elegance is like some of those Canadian, all the colors. So, and this isn't all the colors, but this gives you a hint. And I've seen most of these available around town at different times. Not all of them, but several of them I saw yesterday. So then just a couple of years ago, this 49th parallel collection was developed in Canada. I'm going to find my notes because one of these was actually developed in Duluth. 49, yep. Oh, 49, it says slight fragrance, shiny foliage, and repeat bloomer. So I haven't seen this one in person yet, but it won all sorts of awards. So look for that one. 49th parallel, because that 49th is the Minnesota-Canada boundary. So that's what the collection was named for. Star roses are another new one. Oh, this is the one bred near Duluth. So having survived in Duluth, we know it's good zone 3. Cherry frost, this has won a ton of awards lately. So it's a mini climber up to 6 feet and tends to put out 3 flushes of roses, my notes say. So look for this one. I haven't seen this one anyplace around here yet, but maybe we will. Reminiscence series is another whole new series. These are three of the colors. And then just this morning, I discovered this American Rose Trials for Sustainability, the ARTS. And if you go to their website, David Zlezak, who used to be at the University of Minnesota too, he's now at River Falls. He does a lot of hybridizing of lilies and roses. And he's head of this arts program. And they're looking to identify roses that perform in a given region under minimal input conditions, which means you don't have to take care of them. They don't need pesticides, they don't need fertilizer, and they really don't need any winter cover. And on their website, they have a whole bunch of pictures of the ones that have been tested in various spots, not just in one. I think they started in Moorhead, but they're in a number of spots. Sort of like master gardeners do seed trials. Master gardeners plant different varieties of whatever. I know this year they're doing bachelor buttons and Swiss chard, whatever. And then they report back in so that everything isn't based on how something grows in the Twin Cities. It can be based on how it grows outstate. So it's very useful information. But this is new. I have to research more about this whole arts thing, but they should really be giving us the lowdown on what ones really do well in our cold climate. So I think that's it. If there's questions.
Of the Japanese beetles and rose chafers, do they come out of the ground in the spring?
Yes.
is there anything like rub? that you
Right,
can-
so the rose chafers and the Japanese beetles are beetles. So the eggs are laid down in the ground and then they form grubs, you know, those little white worms that you find when you dig up. There's a very narrow window, and I can't tell you exactly what the timing is, but there's a very narrow window when you can treat those grubs and kill them. So that you would cut down on your numbers. Because the grub tends to go deeper into the soil so that it can survive the winter. So once it's too deep, then your poisons or whatever you're putting on aren't going to reach it. And if you treat too soon, then the pesticide is probably gone. And if you treat too late, you're too late. So there's a narrow window where you might have success, but they're both pretty good flyers. So if your neighbor doesn't treat, you're still going to get them. And the worst thing you can do with Japanese beetles is buy the traps that they sell. They have pheromones in them. So it's like, you know, trap your Japanese beetles. Yeah, but that pheromone is gonna attract them from half the city, or, you know, so your bag is gonna get full of Japanese beetles and you'll think, yay, I got rid of all my Japanese beetles. No, you got rid of some of the Japanese beetles from the whole north side, whatever. So do not ever use the pheromone traps. They're the worst thing. I mean, if you want to put it at your neighbors down the street or something, maybe everything go down there, but no, that's really the dumbest thing you could do is put up those traps. You'll feel good because you'll trap a whole lot of them, but they aren't necessarily all from your yard. So.
I have two questions.
Sure.
The Easy Elegance, were those fragrant roses?
Let's see if my notes say if Easy Elegance is fragrant. I don't have that written down. Some of them might be. I mean, take a whiff of them, but I don't think they were, because they were sort of the first Minnesota bred ones. And I don't, you know, now that they're doing everything with gene splicing and down at the genome level and stuff, they can turn those genes on and off. So they can turn the fragrance on and off. That's why when I first put this talk together a number of years ago, through the Canadian artists, and maybe Sven and Oli had come on, but that was pretty much what you've got on your first page or two. Those were pretty much the hardy roses. And now there are a whole different series and all because they can get in there in the lab and, you know, I want a yellow one that smells good, that's this height, that's, you know, they can under the microscope, they can create anything. So we're seeing a whole lot of them. And that's why I think it's going to be harder to find the old timers, because the new ones are bred more for disease resistance and things like that. And maybe to have multiple flushes and, you know, so the newer ones are probably more bang for your buck actually. But and especially if you want fragrance. So.
My other question is, we read copy the other day and someone mentioned that if you plant chives by the roses, that repels some of the bugs. Is that true?
I don't think so. If chives will repel bugs, I've got chives right near mine and hasn't slowed them down. Most of the stuff on companion planting is, I don't have it in any of my myths presentations yet, but most of it is baloney. Sounds like a good plan, but you know, planting marigolds is one of the common ones, or planting geraniums to attract things. And geraniums attract Japanese beetles, but again, it's whether they're attracting just your Japanese beetles or whatever. So sometimes you can, you know, you can plant, I wouldn't exactly call it companion planting, but you can plant something that they're more likely to go to. So maybe they'll leave your grapevines alone if there's a whole bunch of whatever it is that works. We're going to be reading a whole lot more about Japanese beetles up here, hopefully, because as they become more prevalent up here, people are going to go insane as their whole gardens and trees get eaten up. So we'll be becoming, we haven't had to be experts on Japanese beetles up here because we haven't had them, but I think we're all going to have to learn more about Japanese beetles, unfortunately, because my friends in the cities hate them with a burning passion, so. But we need a few cold days in the winter and then we won't have so many Japanese.
There's a question in the chat about pests. The leaves still have leaf shape, but it looks like lace. Are they eating out the,
Like lace already?
I think they just had it in the past. What pest do I have that leaves in leaf shape, but it looks like lace?
Oh, that's, yes, I've had that. There's these little, let me think what it's called. Rose. Um, If you look on the underside of the leaf, when you first start seeing those, I wouldn't,
Is it an aphid?
no, it's like it look like stained glass almost, and it makes sort of brown spots, because it's this little tiny worm. Oh, I can't think of what the name of the thing is, but if you flip to the bottom side, they eat the cuticle, the coating off the bottom of the leaf. And then, the worm gets bigger in size as it eats, but it causes the leaf to dry out in that spot. It desiccates, loses its moisture from wherever they chew. They don't destroy the whole leaf, so the leaf stays there, but these little tiny worms underneath, and they're so aggravating. And there are chemicals you can apply to deal with those. But the trick is, that's a real good one for catch it early, because they can, if enough of the leaf is chewed on, then the leaf dries up and dies and falls off, and then your plant is losing energy. And that happened to one of my roses last year. Oh, why can't I think of the name of it? Whatever, but it's this little tiny worm, and it's kind of green, so it's kind of hard to see even. And they definitely have some rose bushes that they prefer over others, because it was only one that was pretty much denuded last year, and the roses right next to it didn't have any of it. So the other cool thing that you'll sometimes see is the leaf cutter bee that will cut a perfect circle off the edge of one of the, or leaf roller, is that what it's called? Leaf something. But I watched one do it on one of my roses one day. The bee cuts like this perfect circle and kind of rolls it up and takes it off to their nest. It's really cool. And you end up with these, like happy faces cut out of your roses, but to actually see it happen one day was really exciting. So, and they aren't going to chew up every leaf. They're just taking a few things to their nest, but it was cool.
Another question in the chat, what is the drift rose?
The drift rose, I don't know drift roses. I think that's kind of a name for some of the, I think the drift roses are like the knockouts, things like that you can plant and they just sort of cover the hillside. I don't know if there's a specific drift rose line of roses. I'm not aware of that. And there are some that aren't marketed as hardy, but they probably are. So, like those oh so easies that grow real low to the ground. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know drift rose. Anything else? Yes.
Question. All this influx of the ladybugs now, that they bother flowers?
Ladybugs, of course, the lady beetles were brought in to eat aphids, but the original ladybugs at least eat aphids. So, but they shouldn't hurt the roses. The best thing for aphids is just blast them off with water. Put your thumb over the hose and blast them off, because they won't crawl back up, but they'll, and you probably have to do that every day for a while, but they're sucking the juice out of the plant. So if you leave them there, they'll cause the plant to weaken, but they're pretty easy to get rid of without bringing in chemicals. Yeah, if it wasn't for the bugs, we'd have it real easy to grow anything. Oh, well. So go do your shopping, plant some roses. Don't be afraid. They'll survive. Remember the one in the concrete. So good. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Eh, stop share.
Where it's at.